Well, who needs to go anywhere for a ghostly investigation when you can have it right here on our show? Today, our special guest is Diane Calderon. She's had some after-death communications with her son, and we've experienced some stuff on our episode today. So stay tuned to Back to Paranormal. Well, welcome to our show, Back to Paranormal. I am co-host Brian Mitchell, and here's my other co-host. She's lovely, and her name is...
Marjorie. Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hi, handsome.
Hey, thank you for coming by. You're looking especially lovely tonight.
Well, thank you.
And I have to tell people out there, you make the best sandwiches. She makes a mean BLT, and if you like BLTs,
come on over. I'll make you one.
Yeah, there you go. There's none finer. I had one earlier. It was pretty delicious. And
well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yes, and you are such a great cook. You should have a cooking podcast.
But everybody has a cooking.
Everybody has a podcast. So.
They don't want to hear what I have.
No, they do. They do.
I love making that BLT.
They do. We today, I kind of gave you a little lead-in about ghostly investigations and stuff like that. I have to say that this particular interview was very, very weird and wonderful, and for a lot of reasons that you will find out.
It is wonderful, and what's interesting is how it increased in its fascinating features, I guess, detail.
I guess as the discussion moved along, things started revealing themselves on the show, and it was
amazing.
There was one amazing thing after another, and not for nothing.
Just talking to Miss Calderon, it was wonderful in and of itself without all of that.
Yeah,
it's just a beautiful story.
It's a beautiful story. It's heartbreaking. She has a book, and the book is called
Living and Loving Life All Day, Every Day. Diane Calderon.
Yes, and the way the title of that book came along was kind of chilling in a way.
It's
in a good way.
It's a beautiful detail she reveals at the end of the show.
Yeah, she basically lost her son very early. It was totally unexpected, and then she had some experiences, and that's what led to the book. And okay, so before we start. All right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm giving people the color.
I appreciate that color. But we have something of beautiful color here in our glass.
We're going to have a little drink. And so what are we having tonight and why?
Tonight.
My
lovely listeners, I made glögg for you. And it is, it's a Norse wintertime beverage. It's our first episode in November.
Yeah.
Things are getting chilly. We're starting to enter the holiday season.
Right.
And I like to start, as November progresses, to do little holiday type things. And glögg is it's Viking moonshine.
It's festive.
It's a mulled wine, and it's spiced, and it's cozy.
It's good and moldy. Yeah. No, that's not why they call it mulled wine. Why do they call it mulled wine? I'm kind of curious.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll mull over it.
Yeah. I think we have like I don't know where it is. The sound effect.
You should be on the ready with that every time I make a really bad joke.
Well, okay, so let's clink. This is served in a
slug of glögg.
And it's served in a mug. This is like a coffee mug. And
it's a big one.
Here we go.
Boop.
Ooh.
That was a good clink.
It was a good clink. And here we go. So. Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something.
That's good.
That has
I feel like the horns on my helmet growing.
Yes.
I'm going to start riding with the Valkyries.
What's the ingredients for the glug?
Well, I didn't go full bore. Usually this is like a big process.
You put a boar in there? Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yes, Eye of Newt.
Oh, okay.
No, there's no boar. It's just a lovely red wine. Mm-hmm. And you just stew it with cinnamon and star anise and clove and allspice and all the wonderful holiday spices. And if I bore them, our wonderful listeners, with all the different steps, we won't get to the show. But
Is that the only liquor?
No.
Liquor. What else is in there?
Well, tonight's version only has 2 liquors in it.
So that's wine.
Mm-hmm. But usually it's a blend of red wine, ruby port. Then I make a sugar syrup with brandy and sugar.
Okay.
And rum. And then right before you serve it, you put either a splash of aquavit or vodka in the bottom with almonds and raisins. And then you ladle on the delicious hot mulled liqueur, and it's cozy.
It's very cozy. But tonight you substituted what? You didn't do all that?
I just eliminated some of the booze.
So it's basically just vodka?
And red wine.
There you go.
Spices.
It's actually quite
fruits,
good.
Dried fruits.
It's yummy just like that.
I'm glad that you like it.
And it's good and it's hot. And the closest thing I've had to this recently is hot apple cider.
Yes.
So, but, this is different.
We had that the other day. It was so hot I burnt my tongue. So I'm trying to erase that memory.
Yeah. I burnt myself years ago on a slice of pizza when I was really, really young.
Oh.
And it was like the roof of my mouth took forever to heal because it was just like it was awful. Okay, I'm okay now.
You recovered?
I'm recovered.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was burned by a hot slice of pizza.
I think we've all been there, hon.
I think we have. I think
It's just a sign of enthusiasm. It's like when you open up a bottle of seltzer real fast and you're like, "Oh, I forgot," and then it goes all over. It's because you were excited.
You've had that experience, haven't you?
No, never.
Okay. Anyway, we had this wonderful interview.
Oh, I loved every minute of it. She was so easy to talk to.
She was.
She's very, very human.
Yeah, I mean,
refreshingly so.
There's certain people you talk to that you just say hello, and a minute later you feel like you've known them all your life. Mm-hmm. And it's and the conversation went very, very easy. And I think at the beginning we thought, well, maybe not, but then it kind of just took off, and she was a wonderful interview.
Well, when I called her because we wanted her on the show, and I called her, I was driving home from the store, and we had a wonderful discussion. It had nothing to do with really any of this.
Wow.
So, and I just knew she would be wonderful to talk to.
Wonderful guest,
and she was.
She is and was, and so...
And I can't wait to tell her what transpired in part 2.
Yeah. So this is a 2-parter, folks. And I guarantee you'll want to listen to all of this and then part 2. So why don't we get right to it?
Without further ado.
Let's do it. So anyway, here is Diane Calderon. She is a psychic medium. She discovered she had these capabilities. Also wrote this wonderful book about her communication with her late son, and let's go to it now.
Do it.
Okay, here we go.
Yay.
Well, our guest today has had after-death communications with her son, and her story is an interesting one. She has a book out, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But please welcome on the show author and psychic medium, Miss Diane Calderon. Hi, Diane. How are you today?
Hi, Diane.
Hi, Brian. Hi, Marjorie. I am great today. It's a beautiful day in my neighborhood. How about yours?
It started off overcast and then it got really
Oh,
nice.
it got really beautiful.
We are experiencing summer temperatures here. Summer for us is between 70, 80 degrees, right? Generally. And I think it was up around 75 degrees and sunny in the afternoon. So it was nice.
And the leaves are all turning here. So.
And we've been in your neck of the woods, which is absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country. And so anyway, thank you for doing this. We both really appreciate this. So can you tell us a little bit about the book and a little bit of the backstory leading up to the book?
Okay. So my book that I wrote is called Living and Loving Life All Day, Every Day, a mother's story of lost love and connecting with the afterlife. Now, to begin with this story, back in late 2013 and into early January 2014, I was in a situation where I was caring for my husband. Was a few years older than I, and we were both retired. And he had started the earliest stages of Lewy body dementia a couple of years prior to this time period.
I'm
And
sorry.
Lewy body dementia is a challenging situation.
Yeah, I understand. So, what happened during that time when?
Were you the sole caregiver to him for this? Or
Yes, I was.
yeah.
We lived in a rural area in Arizona
Yeah.
and didn't have a lot of close friends or family nearby. And I basically was the sole caregiver for him through his
That's a lot.
decline.
That's
Right,
a lot.
And I had him home the whole time until he was ready to go over to spirit.
right,
So in this period of time, the only relative I had nearby that was available at times was my son, who was in his mid 30s.
right.
Um,
That's
my son is
Matthew.
Matthew.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matthew.
Okay.
And Matthew lived down in the Phoenix area
Hmm.
and worked in construction. And when he had weekends off, he would come up and visit and help me with my husband, with Sal, and give me a chance to maybe run to the store or take care of some errands.
Hmm.
So early January, I'm in the midst of dealing with Sal and his decline, and it was getting to be pretty challenging.
Yeah.
And, he had moments where he was okay and moments where he was a little lost and would, try to go home. He would leave the yard and we'd have to look for him and
Right.
eventually had to lock everything up so he couldn't get away.
Was
So it
this
was a bit of a challenge.
the
Yeah.
same thing that Robin Williams had? He had,
Yes.
yeah, but he took his own life. But
Yes.
yeah, I guess it's heartbreaking because I
Yes.
would imagine this is like it's dementia. It's a form of dementia, maybe.
Yeah.
They
It's a
turn.
form of dementia. I mean, I think Robin Williams certainly brought it up to the forefront before his, death.
Hmm.
It wasn't that well known. I had looked and researched and tried to find out about Lewy body, and there was not a lot of resources for me to go to
Right.
at the time. So we were just sort of hit and miss
Yeah.
in trying to understand him. But I kind of would tell people it's like he had a bit of Parkinson's and he had a bit of Alzheimer's and he was on a roller coaster. So
Right.
sometimes he was up and doing fine, and then boom, it would come crashing down, and the world was not easy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
dealing with him
I can
wasn't
imagine the challenges, but just imagining, not being there dealing with it at that time.
Yeah.
So
And just having them, but losing them all at the same time.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how did Matthew help with this? He came and helped you around the house, and
Yeah. Matthew would come up and, like I said, I could run to town and get groceries or run some errands, and that was a big help.
Mhm.
So Matthew was here as much as he could be because sometimes he had to work weekends.
yeah,
So he had been up one weekend, kind of towards the middle part of January,
Mhm.
and we had a really big spiritual talk about things, which was unusual for Matt. He was not a philosopher by any means. He was just a practical guy
right,
and not a big reader. But for some reason, we got into a talk about spiritual life and some of the things that I believed. And
Mhm.
I had said something to him along the lines of, Matt, you and Sal mean the whole world to me. And, he's going to be leaving at some point. And And I don't know about you and I, but one of us will probably join him when he goes. Me probably before you. But
Right.
let's make a promise that whoever goes first has to send a sign to the other person
Wow.
when they die.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, okay, Mom, kind of an odd request, but he
Right.
agreed, like, yeah, okay, whoever goes first will send a sign.
Right.
So it was an interesting conversation we had that one afternoon. And, it was we went in a lot of other subject areas.
Right.
I told him that I thought he chose me as his mom and he chose my husband as his dad. And, he had a say in it. And I didn't know where I got that idea from, but it was something I had believed for a long time.
Right.
And so, he could only blame himself when things didn't work out sometimes over his life with us. But,
Mm-hmm.
it was just good to talk to him and hug. And he went off and went on down to Phoenix. He was working on getting a contractor's license. And he was living in a home that we had all purchased that he could renovate and then flip, flip
Mm-hmm.
and fix or whatever.
Right.
And so he was in the process of doing that. And, he went off on his merry little way. A few days later, I'm we're sitting watching television, my husband and I, and at nights, most nights he'd be a little agitated, that sundowner syndrome
Yes.
Right.
dementia
Yeah.
patients could get.
Mm-hmm.
But that particular night he was pretty quiet and the television was running and there was a program that was coming on that we would find interesting. It was a State of the Union address.
Right.
Every year the president would talk and we like to follow, the state of government and politics.
Mm-hmm.
So Sal, my husband, is sitting there watching the program, and I'm kind of looking at the TV and getting a little antsy because it's taking forever for it to start.
Right.
And I happened to look up, and in front of my face, I saw some little lights blinking, and I'm like, well, "What the heck is the little lights blinking here? That doesn't make sense."
Was it like
And they
sparkle?
Yeah,
disappeared.
it was,
Was it
like
like
rainbow. It was
Sparkles in the air, like a sparkly.
Sparkles.
Yeah.
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 And-
And for
and
anyone who's
rainbow
done the 4th
colors.
of July with those little sparklers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where you light them and you hold them out away from you, it was a lot like that, but all these colors.
So it
And-
was over to the side, right? It was over to like the right side or something like that, or to the left side.
The very first ones were right in front of my face, but at an
Wow.
arm's length. They were just like right in front of me.
Wow.
And they
Yeah.
just sparkled for,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, a second or two or three, enough that I noticed them
Right.
and began to question my sanity. But they disappeared.
Right.
And then I looked at my husband and they appeared in front of him.
Wow.
He didn't notice them. He didn't react. He's just looking at the TV.
Right.
And they disappeared. And I'm thinking, okay, I am losing it. That's not going to be good with both of us,
Right.
hallucinating here.
Right.
They showed up again in front of me, but this time they were in front and then they moved over to my left
Mm-hmm.
at about a 90-degree angle.
Yeah.
And I looked at them and they disappeared.
Right. Wow.
And as they disappeared, they drew my attention to what was beneath them, which was a book sitting on a little end table there.
Right.
And it was a book about Edgar Cayce. And I see the book and I
Oh,
forgot all
wow.
about the lights because the
Mhm.
book related to the conversation I'd had with my son a few days before about you chose us as your parents. I knew it when I saw the book.
Right.
Now, how that book got there, I don't know. My husband would walk around, pick things up, and drop them, but it was sitting there.
Yeah.
And I hadn't
Yeah.
seen the book in a while. So I
Right.
pick it up, and I'm excited. It's like, oh, wow, Matthew's coming up tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
and I am going to show him that I got that idea from this book. I know it's in this book. I opened the book right to the page
Right.
that talks about
Yeah.
Casey saying that,
Yeah.
we're planning our births before we come, and
And
we
just-
kind of look at what our parent people might be, and we choose our parents.
Yeah.
So I'm excited now. My son's going to come up the next day.
Right.
Now this was
And,
like
and
a
just for
Tuesday.
our
Can we-
for our listeners,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
would just explain who Edgar Cayce was and
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
why we haven't.
Edgar Cayce was a spiritualist, and there's been a few things about him that you can check out. There was something on, I think it was Ancient Aliens. They did an episode of Edgar Cayce, but he was basically, he would put himself in a trance, and in his trance, he would basically start coming up with information about things. You could ask him questions.
Yeah,
And right, he's passed away a long time, but his teachings kind of have gone on. People have referred to him many times, but he came up with solutions to problems.
That's the most amazing, and very often to heal people
Yes.
in their physical
Yeah.
state.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry to interrupt you.
I've
okay. Yeah.
also seen because the reason why I described it to you, I said it seemed like sparkles, in front of you. To me, it was to the right-hand side, but it was weird because it wasn't projected from outside. It was during the daytime when it happened. It was not on the wall. It was kind of supernatural in the air, suspended, and it lasted for same thing, like 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and I believe that was my dad when that happened, because a psychic medium we had on said something. You saw some reflections in the air or lights in the air, and she said that was your dad. So I didn't tell her that. I didn't tell her that. So. But,
so there you go.
Yeah. So,
and I've heard other stories
similar
since the book came out. I have heard from other people with similar tales. So, it's not just you or me or, a rare person here and there.
Right.
Apparently spirit can manifest in so many different forms. So you've got sparkles for your dad.
Yeah.
What were my sparkles that night? Let's see.
Well, I think one thing that's really neat was that they were multicolored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I like that.
Like little rainbows.
Rainbows.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Sometimes we have to clarify stuff for the audience, because they're all listening. And so anyway, go on with your story.
Yeah. Well, Casey was important. We'd read a lot about Casey over the years, and he talked about reincarnation and soul planning and just a whole lot of stuff. But he was a great healer, and he was just incredible going into trance and finding answers to things.
Yeah.
So anyway, to move forward, my son was coming up the next day because I have a brother that needed care. He had been diagnosed with colon cancer, and I was the nearest relative, in, Arizona, that could help him. So my son was going to be up for the rest of the week while I went and helped my brother and took him to the hospital and got him through the surgery.
Right.
So I had a lot going on that week.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I'm like, okay, well, Matt will be up tomorrow and we'll have time to talk, and I'll show him this book. So the next day, I get up in the morning as usual and, have my coffee and kind of get ready for the day. And then I get my husband up and get him dressed and to the table and having his little breakfast. And my habit would be to get in the car and drive down to get the newspaper. And where I live, I have to drive about a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile down a dirt road to get to a box off the highway where they would put the papers.
I see.
So I get in the car, and it's January, mind you, kind of like 29th of January.
Right.
And it's a bit cold where I live. It's a little wintry like.
Right.
I get in the car, I'm heading down the road, and a flock of bluebirds came up alongside the car, and they were flying along next to the car.
Oh, wow.
Now, has that ever happened before?
Never. In my area, I had never seen bluebirds. These are like western bluebirds.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In my area before. And, it's like, wow, why are they here? That's crazy. And, oh, how cool is that?
Yeah.
So these birds are going along with me down the road.
Right.
And as I'm coming back up, I start thinking about bluebirds, and I thought of my
rainbow
son.
colors.
Oh, yeah. The song, Mr. Bluebird on My Shoulder. And then, the Over the Rainbow where the bluebirds fly.
Yeah.
These songs are going through my head. But I related them to my kid,
That's what it's from. Mr. Bluebird's on my shoulder. It's a truth.
Yeah.
It's actual. Everything is satisfactual. Zippity-doo-dah. Yeah. And now I'm going to have to pay royalties.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have
that music in our heads for a while.
Yep.
So, but, it was kind of cool. And I didn't think much more about it at the time. It's just like, wow, who'd have thought you'd see the bluebirds? And then I would be led to, thoughts of my kid and the rainbows and whatever.
Sure.
So I get back home, and a little bit later, wasn't that much longer, I get a phone call from a Phoenix number. You can see a caller ID. It says Phoenix. And I thought at first, well, maybe it's my son, because a week or two earlier he had called me, had lost his cell phone, and he borrowed somebody else's phone.
Right.
And it had showed up as a Phoenix number.
Sure.
And he says, oh, Mom, I lost my cell phone. I'm borrowing somebody's. And he had called for some reason. So anyway, I see this Phoenix caller ID thinking, well, maybe Matt lost his phone again. But, I hope he's not telling me he's running late.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be up here today.
Right.
And I go, hello. And it wasn't Matthew. It was a Phoenix police detective.
Oh boy.
So the detective identified himself and asked if I was the mother of Matthew. And my heart dropped because, mind you, the kid had been in trouble a couple of times in his life. The police don't call you,
Right.
right? The kid's calling you from, hey, mom, can you bail me out? But the
Right.
police aren't going to call you. They
Right.
call if it's something bad. And so my heart dropped. And I'm like, oh my God, what? And he proceeded to tell me that the night before, Matthew had been killed in a hit and run accident.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
And so,
Wow. Wow.
you just fall apart. I mean, you don't, this is not news you want to hear ever.
No.
And, to get it that way, they couldn't have a sheriff come to the door. They have to do it by a telephone, which was weird.
Right.
But the detective went on to say, the circumstances, what had happened, that somebody had recognized or something about where he lived. I think he lives over here. Anyway, it took the police a while to track us down
Right.
and get a phone number to reach me. So that's why there was a delay, because this had happened the night before.
Mm-hmm.
He's calling me. It's almost noon
Yeah.
the following day.
Wow.
So the way the officer talked is that Matthew was walking his dog across the street to the dog park, and a car came and hit him as he was crossing the street.
Oh my gosh.
And I asked, well, what time did this occur? And he gave me the time. And, I asked for a few more details, but,
Right.
They're not that important right now. So I hang up and I have to compose myself and figure out, what do I do now? What's next? I'm at a loss as to where to
Sure.
turn.
Sure. Yeah.
But of course, the first thing is to go to my husband and let him know. And sadly, he was a bit lost that morning, because when I told him, I just got a call and Matthew was killed in a car accident, my husband just kind of looked at me and he patted me on the head and said, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
He was gone. I mean, he just wasn't there at the
Right.
time. So that did not help me.
Wow. I'm
with
sorry.
him.
Wow. Sorry.
But, I was able to settle and, make a couple of phone calls and reached out to, a couple of friends that I knew they would know how to get me through this, because they had gone through not the same circumstance, but something similar. And then reach out to family, etc.
I don't want to stop you, but when you started to tell these details about the police officer, there was a light anomaly, because we've been watching you the whole time. All of a sudden, all of a sudden the screen got bright in your home, and I don't know what that was. But there was a light change, almost like a surge of energy, and then it came back down to where it is now. That happened maybe a couple of minutes ago when you started that story. I'm just saying that because, so
that happens.
I don't know. Yeah, no. I just thought it was really weird, and right at the start of that, when you were describing, the instances or the circumstances around the phone call. And just thought it was really. Did you notice that, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's remarkable that you point that out.
It's all part of it. It's all part of this, I think. So I have to point that out. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, because I do a lot of Zoom, but it seems like when I am talking about this particular story and what I was going through, things can happen on my end of the screen. So that's kind of cool.
Has it happened before? Has it happened before?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's a validation for me.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't watching myself, so I didn't even notice. So anyway.
Yeah. All right.
There we go.
Well, we were watching. We were
anyhow, I get
very
this phone
intense.
call.
Yes.
Yes, I had to make some, reach out to people. What do I do now? And I need help. My sisters who live, on the other side of the country in different areas, said, we'll be there. We are dropping everything. We're coming now. And they both did. They dropped everything. They were able to get flights immediately.
Wow.
They met in Phoenix within 15 minutes of each other, which was amazing all in its own. Rented a car, and they were heading up to help me through this.
Hope they didn't go through budget.
Wow. So I'm sitting there that night, and, it had been a hard day. And Sal, I'd gotten him into bed, and it still hadn't dawned on him what had happened that day.
Right.
So I'm sitting at the table, and it's getting late in the evening. My sisters are going to come up, in another hour or so, and I'm thinking about what had happened that day.
Yeah.
And I recalled the conversation I'd had with Matt days before about, our promise to each other that if one should die, the other one needs to come back and, give a sign or something. And I'm sitting there like, damn it, Matt, you didn't give me a sign. You're supposed to give me a sign
Right.
of all the things to think about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Wow, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Diane, what happened last night? Now, I had asked the officer at what time did this accident occur, and
Right.
could they tell if Matthew passed immediately? And the officer gave me the time. It was about 7 p.m.
Right.
And they got there like within 3 minutes, the emergency team, and they felt that he had passed pretty quick.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell definitively, but that he was gone pretty quick. It was a pretty bad hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, he told me 7 p.m. Diane, what were you doing at 7 p.m. last night? Oh, remember you were watching TV, and what did you see?
Right.
Sparkling lights.
Wow.
Oh my God. At the time my son died,
Yeah.
he's in my house
Yep.
showing me these sparkling lights. I had no doubt that that was my son showing up to me at that moment. That was his sign.
Yeah.
Right.
And I tell you, that was more emotional in some ways than the call earlier in the day because, oh, I've lost my son. Oh, wait, I didn't lose him. He was right here.
Right.
He was right here from spirit. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So that just got my head going in a whole different direction. By the time my sisters got there, I'm kind of on a high and very excited, and they couldn't figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of hard to explain to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of suppressed it. It's like, okay, you got to play the role of, all right, we've lost your son, and we've got to go through this whole process for the next couple of weeks as to,
Right.
well, what do we do next? And who's going to take care of our brother who needs help? And, all of
Just
these
happened again.
logistics.
Yep, it went
needed
up
to be
again.
done.
It just went up again. Mm-hmm. The
There
light
you
just
go.
went up. Yeah.
There you go. Oh,
Yeah.
this kid's got so much energy. It just blows me away.
Yeah.
So that all happened in the course of what, 30 hours or less.
Right.
That, I see the lights and then I see bluebirds and think of rainbow songs and find out my son had died and then realize that no, he's over on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that moment, we had to take care of business.
Right.
We had to take care of my brother. We had to take care of all the, things you
Get
do
through it. Yeah.
to plan some kind of services or something.
Right.
Had a couple of other relatives who came to help out. We planned 2 parties. We did not do a service at a church because that wasn't my son, and it really wasn't us.
Right.
He loved life. He loved living. He loved doing everything he could do, and he had friends everywhere. So a party up in northern Arizona where we live, and one down in Phoenix where we had lived years before, and where he, would often go back down and hang out with people. 2 great big parties for him. This process took a couple 3 weeks to go through. But after all of that was done, and I get back and I'm now having to deal with life once again with taking care of my husband, and now again it's just me taking care of him.
Yeah.
I began to think a little more deeply about my son and how was it possible he was able to send me those signs. I mean, it was more than just the lights and the songs and the bluebirds, interacting with some of his friends. They were telling me stories about them feeling his presence and how he had often said to them he didn't think he was going to be here long, and how he had begun to get a little more spiritual there towards the last few months. So it was kind of interesting when you put all of that together,
Right.
Yeah.
that
Right.
there was something going on his part where I felt like maybe he knew he wasn't going to be here long. I wasn't seeing it because I'm immersed in everything else,
Right.
but he
Right.
was feeling something. So it pushed me into looking at, what is there after we die? What is the afterlife? I had been raised Catholic, so I kind of had an idea that there's a heaven and maybe a hell. I don't know. I hope not. But that there is something that happens after we move on.
Right.
But what is it? And how did we get there? And then if we're there, how do we let people know that they were there, that they were okay. So he
Yeah.
sent me signs. So how did he
Right.
do that? I was led to start reading about mediums and mediumship and how spirit can connect to us from the afterlife.
Hmm.
And led to a lot of books, a little bit on television. There was a popular show for a while about a medium, I think in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, John. I think John Edward. I think that's the one,
Yeah,
or the other one, which is Miss Caputo,
Therese.
Teresa.
yes,
Yes.
that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Edwards and
Yeah.
her. So I began to get really interested in it, and I stumbled into a couple of really good books. One was kind of questions and answers about the afterlife, and the guy who put the book together had a website called Best Psychic Directory. His name's Bob Olson.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
I decided at some point, Matthew reached out with the signs. I'd like to hear a little bit more. I'd like to know that he's okay, number one.
Hmm.
And I'd really like to know why the heck was he in a situation that put his life on the line?
Right.
I mean, this is a person who had dogs
Hmm.
and he liked to take the dogs to the dog park. Now, the house was, on a little corner, and you walk away from the house, and there's another house, and there's a corner where there's a street that's not the busiest residential street, but it did have a little traffic.
Hmm.
And across that street is a big park, and on the other side of the park is the dog park.
Right.
So the story from everybody who hung around with Matt was that if he took the dogs to the dog park, he would walk to that corner
Hmm.
and make the dogs sit and look both ways and make sure there were no cars coming before they crossed that street.
Hmm.
Because he was afraid that someday the dogs might get out and then bolt over to the dog park and get hit by a car. In fact, he had one dog that could climb a 6-foot block wall. God knows how she did it, but
Wow.
she could climb this block wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the
Yes.
dog that was with him that night. So he's walking the dog, he's not using the leash. In my head, it's like if he had that habit of worrying about the dogs, why would he have crossed into the street with this dog if there's a car coming? Now, this is 7 at night in January.
Right.
The police said that the headlights were on. They couldn't find out any incidents that the driver was impaired or was on a cell phone or distracted.
Right.
The driver said he didn't even know. He didn't even know he hit something. He just boom, something happened. He thought maybe there was a bicycle or a dog. He wasn't sure. He freaked out and he drove on. He's just a kid. He's like 19.
Right.
He didn't know what to do. He took off, turned himself in later.
Right.
So it just boggled my mind as to why Matthew would have put him and the dog in some degree of danger.
Hmm.
Why did he not see that car coming up? And
Right.
so I'm going through all of this in my head, and I decided maybe if I have a medium reading, they can reach out, contact Matthew, and I can get some answers.
Right.
Yeah, so I didn't know that much about mediums at the time, just from what I'd read and seen a little bit on TV. So
Hmm.
I reached out through the Best Psychic Directory to find somebody that I thought, would be a pretty good medium, not just, I looked it up in the yellow pages, but somebody who'd been tested by the guy who runs the directory and had a good reputation.
Right.
So I reached out to somebody who I had no knowledge of who this person was. It just seemed like the right one.
Right.
And scheduled a reading, got all set for it. Had a long list of questions I was going to ask because I thought, well, you sit on a medium reading and you can just say, okay, Matt, what's your name, number, all of that. I
Right.
didn't know.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So she opens up the reading. This was in the end of May. Now, Matthew passed towards the end of January, so it was only 4 months later.
Right.
She opens up the reading, and the first one that comes in is my mother,
Right.
who had died 30 years before.
Wow.
And Mom was not at the top of my list of people I thought I'd hear from, but boy, there's my mom. And this medium is talking about my mom and has some of the characteristics, a little bit about how she passed and some of the things she went through. And it's like, wow, this is pretty good.
Right.
And then the medium says, okay, and she's got a little boy with her. She's bringing a little boy, and okay, now he's grown up. He's a man. Would you recognize that? And I said, yes, because did learn not to give leading
Yes.
responses,
Yeah.
just basically yes, no, or whatever they might ask me to clarify. I said, yes. okay, I'm getting a feeling. He's going, Mom, Mom, Mom. Oh, this is your son. You lost your son. And I said, yes, I did. So then she delved into my son and she had this evidence and described him, described one of his dogs that was with him,
Right.
described a cat that he had lost that I had completely forgotten about that cat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, yeah, I get the dog, but not the cat. That's crazy. So she had a lot of information
Mm-hmm.
and he was having trouble expressing to her how he had passed. Now, I now know that because I can do mediumship now, is that sometimes it's not clear. Spirit isn't giving you the clearest insights as to how they passed. It's
Right.
almost like they're on one side of a waterfall talking to you and you're trying to pick up what they're saying,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
or they're giving you images
It's a
and they're
very
not sometimes the clearest.
complicated message to deliver and decipher when it's, I guess, like two kind of different languages in a sense.
Aren't they generally giving you like symbols?
Symbols, yeah.
Or things that maybe you can relate to that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a variety of ways that spirit will communicate. And, they know the medium when they come in. So some mediums are really great at understanding the symbols, and others are great at feeling things, and others are a little bit better at just getting a sense of knowing.
Right.
And there's a lot of ways of communicating with spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular medium was feeling that it was a quick loss, a tragic loss, that he, what is it? That there wasn't any real pain, but it was very, very quick. And he apologizes and he says he's really sorry. He's really sorry. But she couldn't quite pinpoint what it was
Yeah.
regarding his death as to how he died.
Right.
But she came close. And I said, well, yeah, okay, you've got that. Then, well, do you have anything else you'd like to connect with? And I said, well, yeah, there's a person over there that had passed. And if there's any chance that you might be able to reach this other person, and I don't know if I gave a name, but I think I gave a connection. She said, okay, let me see. And then she started to describe the other person. And then she goes, okay, your son's back.
Your
She
son's
said,
back.
I'm not done.
We just got the light anomaly again, bright. When you said your son's back.
Really bright.
Wow. And now it's still
really bright.
it's fading a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, now she's back to normal.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's my son
that's
popping
wild.
back in, just like he's doing on this interview.
He is.
Hi,
And
Matthew.
he's
How do you
back.
Hi,
do?
Matthew. Hi, Matthew.
Hey.
Yeah.
So she says, he's not done. He's not done. He's trying to tell me, okay, he's trying to go into more detail on how he passed. And so she says it this way. She says, what he's showing me, or, what he's relaying is that I was trying to go to the other side. But instead of going to the other side, I went to the other side. The angels came and said it was time to go to the other side. So I went with them. And she's like, I'm not sure if that makes sense to you. And I said, it makes perfect sense because the circumstances of his death,
Mm-hmm.
he's on one corner, he's crossing over to the other side of the street.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And before he reached the sidewalk on the other side of the street, this car hit him and took him out.
Yeah.
To where? To the other side of life, to the side of the afterlife.
Yeah.
And the comforting part was that the angels were there. He told her, the medium, that he didn't feel anything. The angels were there. The angels came. So in my mind, I'm seeing the angels now surrounded him and said, okay, dude, we're going to the other side. Come on over. Maybe they told him there was a party over there. I don't know. But hey, we're going over to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And he completely didn't see this car coming. He wasn't meant to. The dog was safe. She was ahead of him. She was already in the park by the time the car had, done its deed.
Right.
But he didn't see the car because he wasn't supposed to, because it was time to go to the other side.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
I got to tell you, because of we're looking at you. We're on a Zoom call. We're in New York, and Diane's in Arizona, and so this is being recorded through Zoom, and I have and I don't know why I think this is going to happen, because we're going to have to review the audio. But I have a feeling like when we said, hi, Matthew, I wonder if we're going to hear something on the playback. Now, you know, when we do these podcasts, we normally kind of ease out and then ease back in to our little wraparounds here. This was kind of cut abruptly. And the reason why is just when I said that I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we start getting voice anomalies, EVPs, on the podcast. Just when I said that, all of a sudden we heard something, and it didn't sound like it was like a big word, but it just kind of went boom, like that in the background.
But we didn't know that until we listened back and then listened back again. And the reason, I think, if I may, the reason that you started to think that there would be vocal interference, a fourth disembodied voice coming, was because we kept seeing Diane's screen every time she would mention Matt, her son. Her screen would just light up, aglow, and it was always a proportionate measure to her enthusiasm.
Yeah, the room was pretty dark, and I think behind her there wasn't a whole lot of light, and so she would start talking, and then all of a sudden there were anomalies on the screen. Now, we could see this. We weren't recording the video, but we were seeing it. And then for some reason, I said, you know, I would not be surprised if we start hearing some EVPs. And
you said on the playback, and then when we were almost an hour in, like 3/4 of an hour in to our interview with her, I started hearing these things in my headset.
Right.
Like, and we've never had that.
That's actually a good imitation of it. Yeah.
And I was like,
we've never had that.
Is my stomach growling? What am I doing on this show?
It was my stomach. No, it wasn't. No, it was...
And so then afterwards we thought, oh, wow, that her screen lighting up like that, she wasn't touching her computer.
No.
Just all on its own, just this immense brightness, and then it would slowly fade down. And then I said, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I kept hearing in my headset, I kept hearing these little blips.
Yeah.
And I described it to you, and you said, yes, you heard it. So then we started to listen, and then the darndest thing, we listened to the episode where we were just about to cut it off, and the initial one happens when you said, I have a feeling that we will hear some voices. Yeah. And so I had to really put on my bionic ears to listen to these. So part 2 is really full of them. And I don't know what...
We don't know what to make of them because we've listened to them, and they're very deliberate, and we haven't figured out what they're saying. You know, we kind of have an idea, but I'm going to take all those clips, and I think what do we have, about 7 or 8?
Well, now we have 8.
We have 8 now,
I thought we only had 7, but then you played that part back, and I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
So
pretty amazing.
Some real little hidden treasures in this episode. Yeah. And just having Diane Calderon on our show was honestly a treasure in and of itself. I really feel that way. Well, and I'm so grateful that she joined us.
You're going to have to come back next week for part 2. And, you know,
see what we can do.
This is not our imaginations. We both heard it, we both saw it, and we isolated those sounds.
And by the way, we have excellent equipment. It's not, anything malfunctioning.
No.
We're in a very quiet room.
Well, what happens between Ms. Calderon and here, because it is... from Arizona, there are anomalies that can happen, but we've never had that happen.
No.
Not like that. And the sheer number of them. And then when they start is when I said, I have a feeling that we're going to start hearing stuff. And sure enough, like as soon as I said that.
It's really unbelievable.
It sends chills up my spine.
And because we had just said, hi, Matt.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then
Pretty amazing,
he
right?
was like, okay, let's
Yeah.
talk.
So next week will be part 2. I guarantee you there's going to be more of that next week. And even if you don't hear that, the interview with Diane is absolutely wonderful.
Her story is beautiful.
Yeah.
There's beauty in the tragedy, and the grace and the heart and the strength and intellect with which she has handled all of the cards that were dealt her, which is
Between her husband
and her brother and her brother and then her son.
Yeah.
Most people would not
They crack up.
have done what she has done, which is to be constructive
Right.
and loving and generous of her spirit. And I
it put
really appreciated her.
Yeah, and it put her down a different path in life, too.
Yes.
Yeah, which is very interesting.
Many roads. Many roads.
So anyway, if you're not on our Facebook page yet, please check that out. We have a website, Back to Paranormal. We put some articles on there talking about stuff and about our personal experiences, some notes about the shows and stuff. And you can listen to the shows directly from there. And I got nothing else. What do you think?
I'm going to finish my glug.
I'm going to finish my glug. We're going to glug it up.
Chug
Yeah,
it,
there you
chug
go.
it.
Anyway, come back next week for that second parter. We got some really good episodes in the can for the next month, really. I think it's going to take us into December. So come back for those. We're going to have on an amazing psychic medium that he'll be on the show.
Oh, and you know,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, sweetheart.
No, go ahead.
Just a really appreciative shout out.
Mm-hmm.
We have a listener who chimed in, and they told us how they really feel about our show. And I just would like to quote who is it, a male? Do we know if it's
We
a
don't know
male?
if it's a man or a woman.
Oh, okay. They said they wrote, "This is food for my soul," and I am ever so grateful to hear those words. It makes us feel like we're doing something right.
Makes us feel like we're doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no.
Thank you.
Thank everybody for the great
Thank all of
comments,
you.
and keep them coming because we want to hear from you. So, anyway, I think that's it.
Glug time.
I'm going to robe it up.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, we'll see you all next week for another episode of
Back to Paranormal.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
And God bless you.
God bless you.